Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. For today's podcast, we have the cast of The Runner, which is a thriller mystery. It's about a troubled young teen that's busted for cocaine possession. The police give him a choice: cooperate or spend 10 years in prison. As he's forced to confront a local drug kingpin, the addiction spiral further and further out of control. So here's Cameron Douglas, Eduoard Philipponnat, and Jessica Amlee to talk about their characters and what fans can expect in the film.
Hi, guys. Okay, so I'm going to just start off. I want to ask all three of you how you guys got originally involved with the project and how you relate to your character.
Okay, so I worked with Michelle at her school in Santa Monica, and I hadn't spoken to her in like 4 or 5 years, but I went to the school for like 6 years. And I was still in Los Angeles, and she reached out to me to read the script, and the script is really good. Like when you know someone and they refer you to something, it's like, oh, I hope this is good, so it won't be awkward to, not like the script. But I really liked the script. And there was 2 female characters. There was one really sweet and like one kind of like the rebel party girl. And I was like, can I do the rebel party girl one? Because that sounds fun. And it was fun. And how I related to my character, I don't think there was a ton of relating. In high school, I was pretty tame. And so I think that's why I wanted to play Liz, is because she was kind of outside the box for me. A little uncomfortable to play the party girl.
I originally got sent I was also in Michelle's acting school. And as I left, I had been working with her for around 3 months, and she sent me the script. I read it. It was originally, I think, for a small role, like a jock role or something like that. But I ended up chatting with her a lot about the project and what I felt I could do with it, and the angle that I saw this character at. And yeah, she came back from her vacation, and we spoke, and she kind of gave me the part. And so I went off to prepare for a few months, and then we started shooting this incredible film. But I don't think I could really relate to the character as much anymore. But at the time, I could very much relate to his sort of the need to be heard, I guess.
Similar to Jessica, I guess the script kind of came out of left field, and didn't really know what to expect. But I was really happily surprised. I thought the writing was really good. And the character that they told me to focus on was this character, Detective Wall. And I thought he was an interesting character. I thought he was, not inherently good or bad, just human and trying to, do the job to the best of his ability. But I think he also was surprised at the connection and relationship that he developed with this character, Aiden, which I think was something that he needed in his life, unbeknownst to him. And so it was a really great experience. I mean, all the way around, working with Eduoard, Michelle, and then seeing the great work that the other actors were doing as well. It was a real collaboration. Everybody sort of pitched in, and I think the results are there.
Yeah, it's amazing movie. I mean, it's pretty fast paced right off the bat, and I think that's a good segue to Eduoard, because for Aiden, when you meet him, we're kind of like, and I think, obviously this is done on purpose, we're kind of not really sure what to believe, right? Is he taking drugs? Is he a bad person? And is his mom correct? Is she not correct? And then you start learning throughout the film through flashbacks and various other things. So for you as an actor, how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, he's definitely not the typical protagonist, in the sense that he doesn't feel like a protagonist to begin with. And that's kind of the fun. What I liked what they were doing, and what I wanted to do with this character was not to give sort of a plot reason for everyone to like him, and then go on and show the bad sides, just to make sure that people not just to make, bring viewers in, but genuinely dive into the different filters. And so one mask after the other, as it unfolds, you start seeing more and more of him. And I like the fact that you can't really, at least in my opinion, you can't really pinpoint at what point you start caring for him or liking him or see sympathy. It just grows because his character naturally grows on you. And if you start feeling like you kind of get to know him in a way, although you really don't, you barely know anything about him, which proves so at the end. So I think it was that's definitely what drew me to the project and what makes it interesting.
Is that difficult to do? Because it is true, like you really don't know that much, but you do. And I do think it's a testament to your acting. It's a testament, obviously, to the writing, directing, all the rest of you guys. But you know, you really don't know that much about him, but you do actually start caring. I mean, like literally probably like 15 minutes in, I was like, oh, I'm invested. Like, I want to know what happened to him and why are certain things happening to him? And there's a clear dichotomy between the flashbacks that he has and this great life and a Lila, with Lila and like situations that had happened to where he is now. And you're like, what happened to this guy? And he doesn't come off as necessarily a bad, quote unquote, person. He just comes off as something went on, and then you're just kind of running with it.
Well, I think we've been speaking a lot about this with Cameron, but it's a human story about humans, and you're not, instead of the typical protagonist who's supposed to be somewhat good, although he has flaws, or the typical antagonist who's supposed to be villainous and all that. This movie doesn't really have that. You're playing with people who they're not 100% sure what they're doing, what they're getting themselves involved with, and I think their flaws are very relatable. And that's definitely something that, at least on my side, it's you just kind of had to trust. You had to trust the directors and that the scenes were going to be edited the right way, and really just hone in on the truth of that moment. So not to dive into whatever mood you think this is going, or where this is going, or what you might be thinking, because the movie's set on 24 hours. If all of this is really going on, you're not thinking as much as you're running. You're trying to get everything done. So I guess that was sort of the mentality there.
And then that kind of brings me to both of you, Cameron and Jessica, because your characters obviously cross paths. Cameron, yours in particular, obviously as the detective, much more, with Aiden. For both of you guys, so I guess I'll start with Cameron. For Cameron, for you, what was it like in terms of playing, the detective? And I really loved, there was one scene in the beginning of the film where, the detectives are kind of talking with each other and they're like, listen, is this good for this kid? Like, is it okay that we're doing this, like, morally putting this kid, in risk for possibly getting hurt, and like what situations are kind of putting him in. There's a lot of pressure on him. So for you, what was that like, playing off the relationship between the two? And how do you build, Detective Wall up? How do you create him?
Well, I imagine that the distrust is inherent to that kind of work. So that's gonna be there. And as you say, I think initially Detective Wall is not so concerned about the well-being of Aiden. He's concerned about achieving his objective. And that's sort of the arc of Detective Wall, is how his relationship and the way that he sees Aiden changes, and ultimately the way that it changes him as an individual. And I thought that's one of the things that I was particularly drawn to about this character. I think it's much more interesting. I don't think anybody is inherently bad or good. I think we're all just humans doing the best that we can. And, through the experiences that we have with one another, sort of shapes how we grow as human beings. And I think that is very relatable. So it was really just spot on. The writing was there, and as I said, the performances was there, playing opposite Eduoard for most of it, and his ability made my job that much easier.
For Cameron and Eduoard, for you guys, did you do any like background research at all? Because I was reading some notes, I did some research that this kind of sparked because there are younger people that are put in this position, and there are cops that actually do this to try to take down someone bigger and kind of put the pressure on someone. So I wasn't sure if either of you kind of did research or talk to anybody to kind of, build your characters up or get some background for them?
I did a lot of different things, but one of the things that I ended up doing was I read Cameron's book about his life, and that's kind of how that idea even came about. But particularly just watching people, in my case, and trying to, it's very easy to judge, and it's very easy to, especially me. It was scary half the time when you're walking the streets and you're trying to study people, because you want to make sure you're respectful, and that you're not doing it out of your self-interest. And but a lot of it was trying to find the humanness in it. And I think I definitely surprised myself, because I didn't know much going into it. But if you really open your eyes and ears, I think you'd be surprised about how human these people actually are, and how much they have to say and how much wisdom they have to share. So I got a lot of fantastic insight just out of people who had experienced it. And we actually had a few on set, some crew members who at various times would come up and say, hey, they take me in private and say, when I was involved in such and such, this is maybe how I felt, and stuff like that. And just randomly, and it was very cool that they felt open to enough to come and speak to me about it. So definitely.
I think that sounds pretty good. I love when Eduoard does the speaking. So good.
When I first saw Cameron, I fell in love. I mean, look at his face. How could you not?
Go on.
Look at all your faces. How can you not fall in love with all you guys?
Exactly.
Jessica, I have so many questions for you. So, first of all, I love Liz. I love that she's like a badass. I just love that she's kind of like just crazy and wild. I love how we meet her. I just love everything about her. So I wanted to ask for you, you kind of said in the beginning, it's a little bit of playing out of your comfort zone, right? This is not maybe like your most typical average thing, which is great as an actor, I'm sure, to like have fun and play all of that. So was there anything initially that got you like nervous to step on set? Like, was there a specific scene that you were kind of nervous to film, that you like stressed about? Because she is a little bit of a wild child, like in the film when we meet her.
Right. What I liked about Liz is because she's very realistic. Like, I knew her in high school, but she doesn't really know what's going on in Aiden's life. She's kind of left in the dark. And I think like a big overall arch of this movie is how, adolescents make decisions, but they have adult consequences. And I think she is caught up in the middle of that, of like not being careful. We're in high school. Everything's cool. Everything's fine. I can just have fun. And we all have experienced that in tragedy one way or another, where kids kind of get ahead of themselves. And that's the interesting thing between Detective Wall and Aiden. I took from it was he's not a kid, but he's a kid. And so it's like taking advantage, just kind of like how kids take advantage of being reckless and free. And there's a lot of situations I look back on in school and I think, how did I survive that? How did I live through that? And so, I'm happy that Liz kind of escaped that. But she ultimately left behind, her love. But like, who's to say it was really love in the first place, knowing Aiden's past? So I think it's her confusion and turmoil.
And it's so good because like, even, and again, like scenes just pop into my mind is when you guys are together and he like just is like, yeah, if you want some money here, like here's some money to like buy a dress. And there's like no questions asked. She's like, all right, like whatever, which is something we would do. Like when you're young, you're just like, you're not even thinking anything. And that whole conversation between the two of you. So between, Aiden and Liz, there's like no real information that's passed between the two, but yet they have a connection, which I found very interesting. And I do think it relates a lot on what you just said.
Right. I think they're both kind of delusional because, Aiden wants the comfort that he lost, and Liz wants a future and all the things that she never had growing up, because she's an ambitious, she's going to school, she's really trying. And I think they're looking for each other for something that they'll ultimately never find, which happens a lot in high school.
The two cool scenes we have when I'm in the bathroom and you're on the bed, And then and that scene, what I like about, there are some of my favorite scenes, how they're shot, and the DP is just Gigi's he's just incredible and fantastic, and the director's great. But what I really love about that scene on the bed is it's a movie within 24 hours, right? So we need to assume that they've already had a relationship. And a lot of movies, what tends to happen is a lot of the plot has to come out because you have to go through it very quickly. And that's the point. Nothing is answered. He's laying there where he always lays, and she's there, and they're having conversations where it's a very normal people kind of setting. That's at least what we were going for. And I like that, because you those are some of the moments where you kind of get sucked into that world, and there's a lot of stillness from her and from him, I think, where they're just two kind of beings next to each other, and that there's an energy. You don't need to speak to know that there's something off, and so then every little word adds a little bit to it.
Yeah, it's so true. I noticed like the way that it was filmed right off the bat kind of feels like a documentary in a way, where you feel like, or some sort of like intimacy, like where you feel like you're watching. For Cameron, I wanted to ask you, like the same thing. I kind of felt like when they were showing anything like related to the police work, I loved the scene where Detective Wales has with Aiden, and where you guys are discussing what the plan is, and then you leave, and I was thinking, okay, like maybe they're kind of on the same page, they're getting somewhere, Aiden's gonna get out. And then when you leave, Aiden tapes you because he has no trust. For scenes like that, and for all of like the intimate scenes where we see the detectives having a conversation and things like that, what was it for you that was important to make sure that you got across? Were there specific things that you tried to make sure to stick in there to prevent him from coming off as like a typical kind of bad cop, if that makes sense?
It does. I tend to really shy away from, being on the nose. I just don't think it's realistic, and it just doesn't feel right, as an actor. But again, it just goes back to this sort of this aspect of humanity, and the reality being is that, we're all doing the best we can in any given moment. And this sort of, it just is interesting how people affect one another. And so Detective Wall, I think, found himself in this sort of unfamiliar territory where he was being affected in a way that he did not expect to be, by Aiden. And I think that, had the movie carried on as life does, he would be a better man for his interaction and the experiences that he had with Aiden. He learned from Aiden, and he probably needed that lesson. So just kind of going, that's kind of like that. Those are the feelings and thoughts that I'm having, while I'm portraying this character, and just kind of going with my instincts, and then Michelle really giving me the freedom to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to watch the three of you. And what's also interesting is that all three of you are in different kind of stations of life, right? Because you have Aiden kind of running around and it's like extreme amount of pressure. You have a detective that's in sort of like a powerful position. You have Liz that's just trying to like get by, and wants something better for herself. So the three of you are all in completely different positions in one movie, yet it all makes sense and it all tells a great story. So I mean, it just did something that just worked.
And I think each character, especially our three characters, they have their own story to them. You happen to see most of Aiden's story, right? But there could completely been a version of Detective Wall's story, and suddenly he could be the protagonist, and so there could also, she could have been the victim, just like Aiden was. So I think it just it's the reality of life, just like at the ending, you're saying they were making a good point, saying, well, not only is it one operation, but how many lives would either be made or sacrificed because of this one thing. So it's a lot of high stakes, morale stakes, if that makes sense.
What are you hoping that fans kind of get from it? And where can people find it if they want to try to look for it and watch it at home?
I think people, it should be out in theaters, selected theaters on the 19th or 20th,
19th.
like that. Someone's telling me like, yeah, no, left, more right, 19th, 20, something like that, 19th, something like that. And then hopefully, I don't know yet what streamer, but hopefully it'll be out there, and it'll continue its life. And for me, I just hope that we've been saying it a lot, but rightfully so, that it sheds Well, I'll leave it with this. I remember I went to this, it was a session with a lot of people who were overcoming their past, so to say, within this subject and their addiction. And they were all sharing. It was the first time I was hearing them share all of their personal stories and what they were doing to overcome. And I remember I walked out of there and I called the director and I told her, if there's any, even if this movie is never shown, if it can help one person, then it's worth it, because movies tend to be Hollywoodized and you look at them for entertainment. But in this case, it really is about a really real problem and something that needs more light onto it. So I think that would be something to take out of it. And no one else's opinion matters at all, because it's all about me. It's all
I
about
know,
me.
like it got quiet. I think we
the-
just listen to you talk, and everybody just gets silent with you.
Ooh, I'm gonna be chivalrous and defer to Jessica.
I mean, from like where I kind of land in this story, there's also an element of being on the other side of addiction, and there being a lot of confusion. And there's that like quote, like, confusion is the devil or whatever. And I think that happens a lot for Liz, because she's kind of left in the dark and everything, but she just wants to support, she just wants to love and be loved. And the struggles with that, and not always Liz's character does make it out alive, because of the circumstances that all this chaos can bring into anyone's life. But really, like, there is such a hard struggle for the loved ones of people dealing with addiction, because ultimately that was always going to be Aiden's number one, was his drugs. And it's just unfortunate, he couldn't get better. That's not how this ended. And so there's a ton of lessons in that.
So just my kind of like final thing is, like I said, for fans, like what you guys hope to expect. Cameron, I don't know if there's anything that you kind of want them to get out of it by watching it.
I'll just say I hope certainly that that the fans enjoy the entertainment value. It's a wild ride, and so if that's the takeaway alone, then great. But also, as both Eduoard and Jessica have mentioned, it's a very real issue, substance abuse, this sort of scenario of minors getting more or less taken advantage of by people in positions of authority. And so hopefully there's another takeaway that's lasting, and maybe makes one parent or teenager sort of ask some questions to the man in the mirror, and maybe just be a little bit better for it.
Hope you guys enjoyed listening to the cast of The Runner talk about the film and what fans can expect watching it. The film was released on August 19th and is currently available on streaming platforms, so make sure you check it out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're updated on all of our latest podcasts, and make sure you head over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe, and check out all of our video content.